Peter Sims, the author of Little Bets, How Breakthrough Ideas Emerge from Small Discoveries. Peter, you say that Steve Jobs, Thomas Edison, Beethoven all made little bets. What do you mean by that?
Well, a little bet is just a small, affordable action that anyone can take to discover and develop ideas. So in the case of Apple, the way they'll work is they'll have 100 ideas before they go into a new product, and they'll narrow that down to 3 and then 1. And it's this iterative process of discovering what's going to make the great product. And of course, in Apple's case, Steve is the market when they're making those decisions. But you can also look at people like Chris Rock. When he's developing a new act, he will go into clubs with lots of ideas scribbled down on pieces of paper, and he'll try one after the other, and he'll look very closely at the audience to see, well, what's causing them to make different gestures so that he can build off what works. And so Little Bets is just at the core of this approach that all these people use to develop their ideas.
So a little bet is an experiment?
Yeah, it's an experiment, exactly. It's a way to just take an affordable risk, right? So if you look at how Twitter came about, Jack Dorsey was an engineer, and he was very interested in text messaging, and he had been for a long time. But at the time, he was at Audio, which was going nowhere as a podcasting company. And so Evan Williams said, well, does anybody have any ideas on where we can go as a company? And Jack said, I have this idea. Evan gave him 2 weeks to work on it. Everybody inside Twitter liked it. So then he got 6 months, or 6 weeks to work on it. And before you knew it, Twitter was this offshoot of Audio that became really the company that everyone was talking about. So it's an approach, it's a mindset to be able to constantly be thinking about how to get into new ways of doing things by making small bets.
And what's the opposite of a little bet?
Well, that would be a big bet that's not solving the right problem. And so, we all know a lot of examples of those. Where Webvan was a famous example during the dot-com era, where you spend a lot of money, invest a tremendous amount in an idea that is actually not solving the right problems for the users. And Google Wave might be another recent example of that. So the idea behind Little Bets is that when you're trying to discover a problem, or when you're trying to discover a new way of doing things, start small, iterate a lot, and then once you've identified that big problem, then scale through a big bet.
Wasn't Google, though, a big bet? It wasn't Hulu or Netflix a big bet? Don't you sometimes have to have big bets?
Well, Google started as a library search project, right, where Larry and Sergey were at Stanford, and they got asked to try to prioritize how library search went. And once they figured out that algorithm, they used it to search for information online. So in a sense, they made little bets at the start until they realized they had a pretty interesting solution to a big problem, and then bet big. So I think it's really important to start with a big vision. Always, you're not going to get anywhere if you're not shooting for the moon. But I think the way most great companies become successful is that they discover their ideas. They don't start with the big idea. And I could list numerous examples.
What about Facebook?
Well, Facebook is an example where I think Mark Zuckerberg is a brilliant visionary CEO, but started in a very different place where he was matching, who's hot and who's not, and eventually, as he got farther and farther along, realized he was solving a much bigger problem for a much larger audience than he realized. Just watch The Social Network and you'd see that. So I think there's a really important place for visionaries, and I think like Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos is, but they all make, I think, a lot of little bets on the side to get into these new areas.
When you wrote this book, did you make little bets as an author? Should authors be making little bets as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I tried to take a page out of Chris Rock's book, and I just tried to figure out if I was even in interesting territory with this material. So I would bounce ideas off of friends, just rough sketches on PowerPoints, and that's actually how the title came across. One of the people I talked with was Ned Barnholt, a former executive at HP, and he said, I like these ideas. It reminds me of how I made a lot of mistakes in my career when I was making big bets at HP, investing millions and millions of dollars in projects without actually solving the right problems. So from that, the title came, and pretty much the whole book got structured this way. I wouldn't be able to write it if I weren't making a lot of little bets. It's just a true creative process.
So little bets is just having lots of editing.
Yeah, writing is editing, certainly for me.
And life is editing as well?
Yeah, life's a creative process, absolutely, absolutely. And you don't know, the thing is we we don't know what we don't know in many of these cases. Pixar became a great film company, but it started as a hardware company. And what some people know is that Steve Jobs didn't think it was going to be a film company when he bought it. He bought it for $10 million. It was a hardware company, and to get into films, they made little bets on short, minute or 2 minute short films that eventually gave them the expertise to be able to tell stories, to develop the right technology for digital film, and eventually the credibility to be able to partner with a company like Disney. So, you don't have to be a genius to be able to discover these big ideas. You have to be perseverant. You have to be resilient. You have to go through, I think, a lot of hardship if you're an entrepreneur or if you're a creator or writer or anything to get to a product that you feel good about.